Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I never knew I could be here. I want to be grateful to Anya and her wonderful team for a great initiative for people who are virtually unknown. It's been a long time that I have been struggling for freedom, the right to social democracy, freedom of assembly, free speech, and the protection of human dignity. I've been to jail, I've been tortured, but I said to myself, paying a price for a greater goal is worth more than anything for me. But one of the greatest challenges I faced in my life was when I was dismissed from the university. You can never understand what it means, because for us Africans, education is more than the right to become part of one of the schisms that we all aspire to join. For us, it's about freedom. We live in a communitarian society where we are each other's keeper. So when you are expelled from the university, it is a challenge not only to you as an individual, it's a challenge to your family. It's like a betrayal of the trust invested in you to pursue knowledge for the betterment of your people, your village, and for your own self. I was not only dismissed, I was banned from attending any other university in the country. Then I lost my right to stay in the country. My friends were in prison. I was a student of chemistry, but I decided in 2007, 13 years after I lost my right to education, I never had any chance, no support. No mechanism was in place to give people like us an opportunity to start it all over again. I decided I was going to study human rights, to be able to contribute to the freedom of my friends who were in prison, and to be able to contribute to the process of the protection of human dignity all over the world. I never had the chance. I had no sponsor. I had to apply for the German citizenship to be able to have the possibility to travel to London because I had a refugee status. I traveled to London. I slept in abandoned homes to be able to go to school. At one time, it was so difficult that this university asked me if I could step out, organize myself before I re-enrolled. I said, it's 15 years. I can't keep waiting. I slept from one abandoned home to the other until I moved to Norway, where I met here my fiancée and now my wife. I was flying every Tuesday from Torp Airport. I slept at Stansted Airport on the floor. I drove to London City with the bus. I attended lectures from 10 o'clock. I finished at about 2. I took the flight late at night back to Torp to be able to come and do Avis boat early in the morning, do cleaning in the afternoon to be able to survive, because there was no mechanism to support. I was so happy when I graduated. I enrolled in international relations. Still no support. I left classes halfway to go and give papers to be able to survive. I've now enrolled to do a PhD in human rights law. Still no support. I have to do night shift, morning shift, afternoon shift, and evening shift so I can pay my fees. This is the journey when there is no support. Today we are all here because a great idea has been transformed from a dream to reality. And I was very happy when I heard the foreign minister spoke and the rector spoke, because these are people who can make it happen. I call myself a foot soldier. They are policy people. To be able to have accepted such a great idea is not surprising because we are here in Norway. It's a country that epitomizes more than just a dream for so many people. Very happy that many people would get this message. This program sends a message to those who dismiss me from the university, those who continue to oppress students all over the world, that some people listen from somewhere, and that you, the students who continue to struggle for democracy, for freedom of assembly, speech, and the protection of human dignity, you are not on your own. Someone, somewhere, somehow cares about you. And we are all happy to be here today. This journey has just begun. Let's keep walking until we make sure we can eradicate across the globe those systems of impunity that have made it impossible for so many young people to live their dreams. Thank you very much.
Pain. I see in your eyes anguish. I can read plastered on your faces uncertainty. But that uncertainty, anguish, and pain coexist with hope. Hope that one day we will be able to walk into a free homeland. We will be able to remember all those who've died in our name. We will be able to remember all those who have been raped because they fight for a free Ambazonia. You have come from all places. You've taken time from all your chores. You are here today because you are the true inhabitants of that place that was taken away from us. You have come here as soldiers of the revolution. The last people standing to defend our values, our customs, and our tradition. You've come here to send a message to those who have occupied our homeland, have raped our girls and turned our fathers into boys. That before they will occupy our land in the next 2 years, they will have to eliminate every Ambazonian from the planet Earth. 45 years ago, they instituted a concept of national unity. That concept coexisted with the destruction of our economic potentials. When we protested, they called us terrorists. They said they were standing for national unity. That national unity meant the destruction of our own potentials. It meant the elimination of our own leaders, our own patriot volunteers. The concept of nationality, of national unity meant we did not have a university. That we should go to Yaoundé and study in French in the name of national unity. It meant we could not have our own parliament.
Stay tuned on ACN TV. We will Ambazonia Defense Forces, the vanguards of the Ambazonia War of Independence.
There is nothing more precious in life than freedom.
Your freedom is in your hands.
There is nothing more precious in life than freedom.
Your freedom is in your hands. I have come here as the commander of this revolution to let you know that we will defeat Cameroon. We will not only defeat Cameroon, we will make it impossible for Cameroon again to ever invade our land.
Because this is the appointed generation. And we are going to see Biafra.
Nkem? Nkem?
Yes, you are
Okay,
live.
let's leave at the top of the hour, please. Oh, sorry.
What has Nkem done, Mr. VP?
Was that a call from
Chief of Staff?
from the chief of staff, or was that a call from the capital of Ambazonia, state of Libyalem, in Fontaine?
That was a call from the chief of staff. All right, gentlemen, you're all welcome.
Mr. President, your vice president, on a place over there.
Thank you. You too. Achite Atibu in Libyalem.
In Mancon, how do we say it? Kanchi in a beer.
In Buki, they say Afane Koafi, shake no day.
All right, gentlemen. So, what are we rolling on? Spokesman, today we are talking about recognition and world dynamics. And we are drawing inspiration from the what the Vice President described as the bold decision from Norway, Ireland, and Spain in recognizing Palestine. Does it really make a difference?
Yes, indeed. And I think thanks a lot, Mr. President. Thanks a lot, Spokes, for us to dissect this current world affair issue of recognition of Palestine and relate it to the situation in Ambazonia and what the AGOVC is doing in terms of our own recognition, be it formal or informal recognition. Bear in mind that there are formal states, just as there are informal states. By informal, we mean states that exist, but they are not formally recognized under the UN, the international instruments, but they currently exist and they are self-determined, self-governed, and they look after their own future political affairs. So we will look into that today. And I think the discussion is going to be very inspiring for our cause. It's going to throw in more light into what Ambazonia is up to. I look forward to that discussion.
It does,
Spokesman.
Mr. Vice President, it does make a significant difference, and I agree with you that the dynamics in international diplomacy and how the world functions are drastically, radically changing, especially the structure of global power. And we are seeing this playing out clearly in the case of the conflict between Israel and Palestine and how the world has handled the conflict. The bold step that has been taken, described by the Vice President in terms of these unprecedented steps that have been taken by these three countries. I think there is hope here for what the future of that conflict looks like.
All right. I submit that these recognitions, though unprecedented, comes after more than 130 other countries had already recognized Palestine. And I see it simply as a political statement rather than changing legal realities or giving Palestine as an international personality other rights under international law. I will go right away into the question of recognition and its correlation with statehood, because this is very important for the state of Ambazonia. We have argued, and rightfully, that Ambazonia is a state. Whether it is recognized or it is not recognized, it is a state, it has international personality under international law, and this fits squarely into the vice president description of formal and informal statehood. And they are what we call the three element doctrine of recognition. This is very important. I have argued this, and I think the spokesman, vice president in numerous outings, it is described as the three element doctrine of recognition. When countries come to recognize states, and why they recognize states, they have to fulfill three fundamental conditions. They are not static. Sometimes there are alterations based on whether a state is recognized by an international body or whether it is recognized by another state. The first thing is the state must have a fixed territory. And we all agree that Ambazonia has a fixed territory. Though we are talking about the Palestinian situation, we want to make sure we use this situation to highlight Ambazonia in a way that Ambazonians come to use their own case to understand Palestine rather than the other way around. And so you must have a fixed territory. A fixed territory means you must have an international border, and that Ambazonia had through the Milner-Simon Treaty between the French and the British in 1919, an international border between Ambazonia and Cameroon and Ambazonia and Nigeria. The second condition in this three element doctrine that states use to be able to recognize another state is that of the fixed territory must have the element of a people. They call it the state people. And in the Banjul outcome in 2006, if anybody ever doubted whether we are a people, that was laid to rest in 2006. It is on the basis of peoplehood and territory that the League of Nations assigned us, the status of a mandate under the British system and the trust under the British system in 1946. The last element, which is critical, which is what we have been clamoring and talking about, is what I call state power. State power, it manifests itself sometimes in a government that has governmentality, can exercise jurisdiction over the territory, and demonstrate that we have always used control of territory. We have used control of territory as a manifestation of state power. That's why we talked about dynamic control. We talked about static control as very important in showcasing the third aspect of the three element doctrine of state recognition. And for the case of Ambazonia, I think we have been able to demonstrate the two other elements, and we are still struggling to demonstrate the third element. I'll let the others chime in before I will move again into some other very important aspect that now relate to the question of Palestine.
Mr. Vice President, you go ahead and I'll follow, please. VP, we can't hear you, sir.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. President. I think you clearly elucidated on the three key elements that underpin statehood and statehood recognition. And if you look at how those three elements engineer the actual process and outcome of state recognition, you would realize that there are basically two approaches. I'm coming from a doctrine that the grassroots plays a critical role in the recognition of their state, or in their recognition, whether as a people having a territory, which these two, as you've clearly said, are non-negotiable. They've been established in the case of Ambazonia, but also in the demonstration of power, which we have to a great extent showcased nationally and internationally through ungovernability, through establishment of institutions such as community schools, the liberation tax, the protection of our civilians in areas where we exert a great deal of control, be that static or dynamic control. Now, if you look at the way Palestine has gained recognition through the postulations of Ireland, Norway, and Spain yesterday, you would realize that the push for Palestinian recognition at this point mainly originated from grassroots mobilization in the different countries. And bear in mind that although these three countries have come forward, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The statements from France, the statements from other EU capitals point in the direction of formally recognizing Palestine, not through UN instruments. Recognition of states through UN instruments is mostly a top-down approach. But through the mobilization, political and civil mobilization of voters, of political parties in these three different countries, which are the flag bearers of Palestinian recognition in contemporary times, you would see that it has brought pressure to bear to the political elites in these countries, to the political system in these countries. And as such, the political system that was in favor of Palestinian activities when Hamas broke into Palestine on the 7th of October 2023, within the last 6 months, they have done a U-turn. That is the power of grassroots mobilization and the voices of those who cast their vote in democracies. I should emphasize, in democracies. And for Ambazonians that live in these democracies, we could take a leaf out of what Palestinians and other Arabs have done. Take, for example, in Ireland. For decades, Palestinians have enrolled into different political parties, be it Fine Gael, be it Fianna Fáil, be it Sinn Féin, be it the Labour Party. They are majority in the Labour Party in Ireland. And through their grassroots participation in political activities, such as leafletting, such as canvassing, such as paying their membership fee and being present in rallies and supporting local parliamentarians and local political actors' activities, they have been able to state their case when Israel decided to retaliate forcefully, disproportionately to the attack by Hamas. And that has turned all political parties in Ireland to listen to their grassroots. Why? Because they know the grassroots provide them with support. They know the grassroots keep them in power and they can vote or not vote for them in elections. And as such, their policies and their posture has been determined by these grassroots. Take, for instance, other countries within the EU where you have these Palestinians and Arabs present. I call Arabs in quote, people from the Middle East who are sympathetic with the Palestinian cause. They have enrolled in political parties, even in the UK as we speak. And that has also engineered a call for elections in the UK, although the UK is a staunch ally of Israel, having been the colonial master of Palestine. So what are we going here? We are simply demonstrating how instruments of the UN have been unable to put pressure on Israel. Remember, there have been more than 20 resolutions in the UN putting pressure on Israel to recognize or to at least respect human rights, give back territory that was seized in the 1967 war. But Israel has frowned at all of these resolutions with disdain. Israel has been able to show non-commitment to all of this to a certain extent. I would say disregard the United Nations with the help of the US. But with this new community mobilization, or what we call the bottom-up approach in recognizing Palestine, the hope and the trajectory is that more pressure will be put on Israel, particularly the leadership in Israel, to listen to the international community, to recognize that Palestinians are a people, to recognize that Palestine has a territory with its border as in 1967, but also to recognize that Palestinians exert power in terms of Hamas and Fatah in Gaza and West Bank respectively. So that aligns with the three criteria of statehood that the president was talking. I think I yield for now without taking too much time, and I'll chime in again as we move on.
Spokes, one moment before you get in, let me emphasize what the vice president has said. It is very important on the issue of a bottom-up approach, grassroots mobilization, and the Ambazonian scenario. Realize that from 2017 to about 2020-21, Ambazonian grassroots mobilization altered, several policies within Western powers, from London to Berlin to the United States. There were several resolutions in the U.S. Senate due to Ambazonian grassroots mobilization. The importance of grassroots mobilization cannot be overstated. If you see what is going on in U.S. campuses with students sitting, and if you take the case of the United Kingdom with the elections called up in July, or if you take the change in policies by the Biden administration in not sending certain kinds of munitions to Israel, or tying the sending of those ammunitions to the allowing of aid. It has not simply been because the U.S. Administration has decided to alter its policy. They realize it's an election year. The grassroots mobilizers can alter the outcome of the election and will affect the Democrats in a very significant way. So these two approaches, from the static or institutional approach, which has failed in the 50 years, to the bottom-up approach, which is altering the way that policies are formulated, actions are being taken within certain countries, should really remind Ambazonians of the importance of their actions. And that's why in my last outing, I made it absolutely clear that between now and October 1, it is important for Ambazonians to reignite the spirit of grassroots mobilization and to be part and parcel of the vehicle of change that is needed at this particular moment for the case of our country. Spokes, let me let you chime in.
What Mr. President, what you have said in terms of the three criteria that qualifies a state or a people to be recognized, and what the Vice President has also stated in terms of grassroots mobilization, those things are very important. You can have that grassroots mobilization. One of the reasons, and something we all need to be studying, is why has the grassroots mobilization now intensified? The conflict has been going on for a very long period of time, even before all of us were born. Why has now that grassroots mobilization intensified? And why do so many young people across the globe, including in Canada, in Norway, in the United States, in Ireland, all across the globe, why are they so much interested, engaging, and carrying out actions to push to not only the end of this conflict, but to make sure that the Palestinian people can have a state of their own, can gain that recognition, and have an established government that can take care of the affairs of the Palestinian people? That's a question we all should be asking and be examining. It comes to what did Netanyahu ultra religious zealots are doing in Gaza in the name of religion, in the name of their birthright to that piece of real estate. What Netanyahu government is doing to the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. As of today, more than 35,000 Palestinians have been murdered, most of them children. 90% of all hospitals, schools, churches, mosques, communication systems in terms of foreign TV studios, radio stations, NGOs have all been bombed completely to the ground. These things are unconscionable. These are nothing any father, any mother, any child can accept as a response to an act of violence. Israel has gone above and beyond and has lost even the sympathy it has enjoyed over the last maybe 50 years. The action of Israel, or the reaction of Israel to Hamas attack of October 7 has changed global perception of what Israel is, what its aims are, and Israel has proven itself to be, the Netanyahu government has proven itself to be not a country that is interested in either solving the problem, addressing the problem, but is interested to do exactly what Mr. Biya, the Cameroon terrorist military, the CPDM fascist regime are doing to the Ambazonian people. It's the exact same thing. Dispossession, extermination, all reports from the human rights, from the Amnesty International, all report from Human Rights Watch, all report from B'Tselem, the most human rights organization in Israel. They have all pointed out that what Israel is doing, including the ruling in ICJ, the case between South Africa versus Israel in ICJ, all have concluded what Israel is doing in Gaza or in the Palestinian territory constitute to act of genocide in order to exterminate the Palestinian people to possess the land. Those crimes, the killing of women and children, the killing of babies, rendering millions of people homeless, these things have pushed the young people, young Arabs, young Americans, young Europeans, young Canadians to the streets, to campuses, to tell global elites This cannot go on. We will not allow this to happen again, not in our lifetime. You may have done those things in the past. We will not accept that. And anyone who stands to support these crimes, the killings of babies, the killings of mothers, just destroying entire communities, entire cities, and entire towns, if this is what we support, your government will go down. This is an information campaign, a grassroots mobilization based on a conscience, a love for humanity, a call for the respect, the rights of children, the right of people to exist, the right for people to have their own state. What we are seeing is it's a grassroots mobilization driven by an ideology, a new ideology for the respect of human rights, a new ideology for the respect of those international laws that have been crafted by these nations. But because of global power, they will disobey, disregard those international laws because of global power. But the power of the grassroots, the power of community mobilization, the power of information communication, the young people that control TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, that's the currency of today. The Ambazonian people have done really well. We've used that same grassroots mobilization. We've used that same utilization of social media, of Facebook, of YouTube, of TikTok to drive our message and change international perception for the Ambazonian cause. And I think as the Vice President has stated, as the President has also stated, if our people can reignite the power of the grassroots, if Ambazonians in the diaspora can show that love and suffering of our people on the ground, can show the sympathy and compassion for what our people are going through, the killings of our people, the burnings of our home, the destruction of who we are as a people, if diaspora can reignite that love and not let stupid political policies, not let corruption by failed leaders, not let movements that have died to disengage them from what matters to our people and for what our people have been fighting for, I think we'll do very well. And I think the President is doing a great job in leading the Ambazonian people, showing an example, re-engaging, reigniting the commitment and the passion of our people. I think it's a matter of time for most Ambazonians to be re-engaged.
VP, let me transition to you. I will do transition most of the time. I think thanks spokesman, but for the very passionate, substantive arguments you've made. And I want to pick on to something you've touched before the Vice President comes in. It's the idea of impunity, which has happened since October 7, after Hamas invaded Israel. I think Israel had an opportunity to act in a way that will solidify its support and its claim of its right to exist. I will go back into history after the Vice President must have spoken to map the trajectory of the evolution of the Palestinian conflict and the creation of the State of Israel, and for our people to understand this tragic journey and how it reflects what we have gone through. But the aspect of impunity is very important. If you look at the actions of Israel, and if you look at the way Netanyahu has conducted himself, you see Mr. Bia immediately. The way Israel has made the argument is using the idea of the existential threat on the Jewish people. That is the argument that has been used for more than half a century to be able to justify disproportionate actions. And I believe the Israelites have been hijacked by these right extremists, the same way that the state of Cameroon has been hijacked by the thugs and the barbarians, and consistently using and I'm making the argument in a very smart way, rather than looking at a war against the Palestinian people. They have declared a war against Hamas because it resonates internationally, since Hamas has been declared a terrorist organization. Its methods too has been very questionable, and so Israel thought it could get away with carpet bombing, the kind of Dresden approach to bombing an entire city. And why I want to touch on this is because it relates very strongly to the idea of self-determination and to the concept of recognition. Every people have a right to establish a government over them, because that is the instrument that can be used to exercise both state obligation and state rights. One of the most important aspect of state obligation is the protection of the people within that state. That's why the third element of state recognition, which is the demonstration of power, which can be reflected in the establishment of a government, is very critical in recognition. And the fact that the Israelites have systematically, I'm not talking about it's a policy, and all of us follow the case in the ICJ between South Africa and versus Israel. And we saw clearly how the South Africans demonstrated the policy of intent in the actions of Israel. It proved it clearly that there is an element of intent in terms of the rhetorics, in terms of the planning, in terms of the systematic approach to delivering this kind of violence. And I think, and you're right, that when the grassroots, because forget about the static systems, the institutional approach that should be able to invoke the right of recognition of the state and the government in order to give them the chance to protect their own people. Once the grassroots became, drew the conclusion that the states, the institutions are trapped in a system that they cannot extricate themselves from, then the now use what the vice president has raised here, the power of their vote, the power of their wallet, the what you have raised about the TikTok, Instagram, different medium through which they could influence policy, influence others, and call Israel's bluff. It empowered different countries to be able to recognize Israel. But let me conclude on this. And this is very important. When you see the actions of Cameroon in Ambazonia, when you listen to people like Atanganji, if you listen to people like Bia, you know definitely that the use of state violence in a disproportionate way is a policy. The burning down of villages, the burning of homes, the getting of young Ambazonian males, they are all policies designed to exterminate, designed to eliminate viability, the imposition of conditions that are incompatible with human life also fulfills this kind of systematic violence. And as you have called, I hope Ambazonians will come to the realization that continuous engagement, continuous mobilization will alter our collective destiny. VP.
Thanks a lot, Mr. President. Thanks, spoke. And you have clearly likened the actions of Israel in Palestine to those of Cameroon in Ambazonia, and why Norway, Ireland, and Spain would intervene through grassroots mobilization, through grassroots call for something to be done. But it is also the case that Norway and Ireland represent one of the leading countries in respecting the rule of law, human rights. Because you would recall, and Ambazonians would recall, Cameroon has tagged us rats. It's a policy. Cameroon has tagged us all inhumane names, and they follow on their policy to make sure that those considered as inhumane, the Ambazonians, are exterminated. And that has been done so much. But countries like Norway, where I know most Ambazonians would know this, the president resides in, countries like Ireland, where I reside in, these are countries that have stood both privately and publicly for human rights, for upholding international rules and norms. And as such, we can recall that all of us sitting here have been reported to our different institutions by Cameroon in an attempt to dehumanize, in an attempt to circumvent the principles and the values that these two states hold dear and underpinned by their policies. So what are Ambazonians supposed to do in this situation? What we've been able to do in our countries of residence, and I think this might not come as a surprise, but it will be to many, is that the Ambazonian Governing Council, through the president, through the vice president, have engaged both at local level, at political and at diplomatic level, these two countries, to bait for Ambazonia. And I we have severally told Ambazonians that there are countries that the Ambazonian Governing Council, have engaged to bait for Ambazonia. However, what Ambazonians need to do, remember, Palestine and those that support Palestine have been very vocal at the international, through international institutions, through the UN, through Human Rights Watch. But what has brought this change in approach is not the way different countries and different institutions at higher level have engaged Israel or have engaged the Israelites, but it is how the Palestinians have engaged in the political systems out of Palestine. And as such, it is my contention and my request for Ambazonians, wherever you are resident, join a political party. Ambazonia has depended so much on sympathy from the political elites in their different countries. They have depended a lot on people holding the values of humanity at heart in order to push the Ambazonian cause. But we have seen from the Palestinians that, well, in the last 10 years, they have become members of political parties. They have engaged in their local councils with their local politicians. And through that, with other approaches like the TikToks and rules, and to be seen to do the right thing, as these two countries said, that they want to be on the right side of history, Norway and Ireland, have been able to push the case of Palestine in the direction that Palestinians want. So, for Ambazonians, we have done very well in terms of community mobilization, but that mobilization has mostly been within the Ambazonian community. In the coming weeks and months, the AGOVC would be putting out a blueprint on how we can do community mobilization out beyond our community, especially for the diasporans, and how diasporans can participate and become engaged in the civil and political systems of their own countries, even at local level. You don't have to stand for elections, but you can. Palestinians and Nigerians have shown us. Even without standing for elections, you can influence policies. You can go into the office of your local parliamentarian. You can go to the office of your local mayor. And because you hold the vote, because you are a member of that political party or not, but of a different political party, and they know your vote can haunt them, and they know you have supported the activities of the party in one way or the other. Sometimes must not be financial. It could just be by sparing an hour a week or an hour a month in order to engage in party activities, in order to attend party events, in order to influence policy or to make proposals. That in itself goes a long way, and it's a long-term approach. We have been kind of looking at short-term approaches which do not bear fruition. Palestinians have engaged in this long-term approach, and after 10 years, we are seeing the results. We know they have done that, but it is in the last decade that Palestinians and those sympathetic with Palestinians have used grassroots methods in order to galvanize support, in order to push their own agenda, because they realized that international institutions were so political and they were so neo-colonialist in their posture. And as such, they could not make any headway. Therefore, they looked for other methods. So this is where we are. And I think the journey that Ireland has undertaken, I will chime more on that, to where they are after the president speaks.
Thanks a lot, VP. The rich content. I'll let the spokesman chime in before I come in on the trajectory of or what I call the root cause. We always talk about the Ambazonian case. We talk about the root cause of the conflict between us and Cameroon. I would like to touch on the root cause of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and how that reflects in its entirety, historically and in terms of the moment, the situation that we face with Cameroon. Spokesman.
Thank you, Vice President. What has happened with Spain, with Ireland, with Norway? The Prime Minister of my own country here, Mr. Trudeau, has made a statement. The Minister of Global Affairs said Canada is also looking and taking steps to recognize Palestine. There are certain conditions Canada has to fulfill. So the dice will keep rolling in favor of the future. What has happened here is the excessive use of force. Netanyahu response, disproportionate and overwhelming response to destroy and kill massive number of children, of women, and destroy entire cities. No father, no mother can live with that. The world has not acted the way it should have acted to halt this aggression, to halt this destruction. So states like this will take these bold moves as a leverage, as a signal, as a message to someone like Netanyahu and the Israeli government to tell them, if this is what you are going, this is how you are going, these are the steps we will take to stop you and to stop your killings, to stop your destruction, to stop your human rights abuses, to stop your war crimes, to stop your crimes against humanity. These are very powerful statements against Israel. These are very, not only politically, but very symbolic and significant steps in altering international behavior. Mr. President, I know you have a lot to talk about this. I will let you talk about this and package it in the way that it will fit into the context of why states, why the recognition of Ambazonia is inevitable if Mr. Biya and the Cameroon Rooks government continue with their war, with their genocide and the war of Amazonian people. The world will have no choice than to recognize Amazonia in order to stop the abuse.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Spokesman. Something is very important here, and Ambazonians will have to understand this. Recognition is important in giving a state kind of international personality. Recognition is important in establishing relationships with different countries. It may not be necessary in your existence because you can still exercise state power without formal recognition. We have Palestine, though recognized by more than 130 countries, is not having a UN seat. We have Taiwan, though not basically recognized, is exercising power. We have even Somaliland, just been recognized by Ethiopia in a questionable way, but yet it has been exercising state power. Recognition is important, but Amazonians must take into it that the three conditions that are necessary for the state to be recognized are basically almost fulfilled. Having a territory, having a people, and exercising state power. And that brings me to another point before I get into the historical trajectory, which the spokesman had spoken about, I think, more than 6 months ago, the concept of self-government. And I think the Vice President also touched it here. What Ambazonians need to do is to exercise self-government in terms of their education, in terms of leveraging their power in taxation, in terms of ensuring that policies that are inconsistent with the survival of Ambazonians are enacted, in ensuring that there's a clear demarcation and rules on the ground that gives a very strong and positive relationship between our forces and our people, and in basically making sure that the actions of the Republic, its policies on the ground, are seen as alien to the Ambazonian community. And I think the Amazonian Governing Council has been able to provide that leadership. But let me touch a bit before I go to the Vice President on this trajectory. It's very important because people are asking the question, how did we get here? These people have been fighting every day. What happened? People have many stories. We have even biblical stories about whatever we talked about. That's where things happen. Jerusalem is there, So what is happening in God's own territory? And so if in God's own territory there is perpetual fighting and suffering, what hope do we really have? So Palestine has been a British mandate. Familiar? Palestine has been a British mandate as far back as from 1917 till up to 1947. It was a British mandate. What is called today Palestine and Israel was known as Palestine, was a British mandate. So what happened? And that brings me to what I call every mandate should lead to self-government and independence. Why didn't it happen for Ambazonia? Why didn't it happen for Palestine? There is an important letter here I would like to read. And first, let me state clearly the root cause of the Palestinian conflict is in what we call the Balfour Declaration.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Balfour Declaration. Sir Balfour was a foreign affairs authority who addressed a letter on November 2nd, almost 1947, to Lord Rothschild. And he said, I have much pleasure in conveying to your own behalf and on behalf of the Majesty of Her Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet, i.e. the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This letter is the root cause of the conflict between Palestine and Israel. The United Kingdom, as the trustee, basically in sympathy with the pain that the Jewish people had gone through World War II, including the Holocaust, decided that Palestine was going to be divided into two, one for the Arabs and one for the Jews. And this led to what I call an Arab revolt and the Declaration of Independence by the Jewish component in 1948 and the establishment of the State of Israel. And that led to what I call the Arab revolt, massive displacement of Palestinian people. So this has been a war as far back as 1948. And so this is important because this is exactly what happened to Ambazonia. Instead of granting us our independence, first, don't forget the British also divided their own territory into two and then handed part to northern Nigeria and decided we were either going to be part of the Eastern House of Assembly or we form a federation with Cameroon. But what has happened that the conflict has been prevalent, that a solution has not been found? It is also because of the Israeli claim of the territory being their ancestral homeland and compromises being made by Israel to ultra-Orthodox radicals who have decided to continuously expand the territory of the Jewish state, claiming most of the territories of Palestine. The international community has recognized the borders to be the borders of 1967. And the reason why there has been reluctance in recognition has been because the international community has held that recognition should only come through bilateral negotiations by both parties. The essence of this approach has been that only through negotiations would the parties agree on a border that may not be the 1967 border that is recognized as the international border between the state of Israel and the state of Palestine. So the reluctance of the United States, Britain, and the others has been that a recognition of the Palestinian state is a de facto recognition of the 1967 borders, because you cannot recognize the state without recognizing its inherent borders. And if they do that, it will go against the Israeli state policy that the 1967 border is a disputed border. And so the decision by these three countries is not only about this kind of formal recognition of the existence of the Palestinian state, it's also giving assent to the United Nations held position that the border between Israel and Palestine is the 1967 border. We have argued, and successfully so, that, and that has been also been upheld by the African Union Constitutive Act in its Article 4, that you cannot simply alter your border at independence. You cannot, as the spokesman said, and the Professor Carson Anyangwe has written about the principle of uti possidetis. You cannot simply dispossess a people of their land, which is exactly what Israel has attempted to do, making the contours of a Palestinian state that does not start from the 1967 border not viable. So if Palestine will agree that, okay, we are going to negotiate this border, and it ends up that it is not going to be the 1967 border, the Palestinian state will not be viable. Similarly, Cameroon has used the kind of almost biblical argument used by the Israelites, their ancestral homeland, to claim that, somehow biblically, there was always one Cameroon. There was always one Cameroon. Listen carefully. I talked about the British mandate, far back as 1967. Don't forget, Ambazonia was not even part of that so-called German Cameroon until 1887. Between 1884 to 1887, when the Germans had taken over this territory of Cameroon, we were under the British, and we only fell within the German state of Cameroon in 1887. So the ancestral homeland, that Cameroon, has become the mother state, that it has the power to claim every other inch of that territory of Cameroon except that held by Chad, Gabon, Central Africa,
and Congo.
So Ambazonians should know that this is important. VP, let me not take a lot of time before you come in. Ambazonians must know this. The concept of statehood in its modern form is as young as 1648. The Westphalian concept of statehood. The concept of statehood in Cameroon and in Ambazonia is as old as 1960 and 1961. There has never been anything as the state of Cameroon. Never. There has been the territory created, stitching together peoples by colonialists. And when I read somewhere, somebody said, "Oh, who gave you the right to just ascribe yourself Ambazonia?" And I said, well, thank God it's indigenous. I mean, if you are claiming that we don't have a right to ascribe to ourselves Ambazonia, what gives you the right to simply take what some guys passed around in Ribauri and Son Janga and call it Rio dos Camaros, and you then assign to yourself the name Janga, and you are able to have the audacity to question people who ascribe to themselves a name that is indigenous to their existence? So Ambazonians should relegate all of these historical fallacies. They should reject all of this ngongo nonsense. They should be able to know that our existence is not subject to any international arbitration, is not subject to the to the whims and caprices of colonial apologies or what they think. All their historical fallacies is debunked. All their claim about so-called ancestral homeland is a fallacy which we must reject. And I think the recognition by the trial of the right of the Palestinian people and inherently recognizing their border with Israel should give hope to our people that sooner than later, what is a reality is going to be attested through by other countries.
Rightly so, Mr. President. I think you have nailed it in explaining the concept of statehood and the relative youngness of the state of Cameroon and Ambazonia. And I will make 3 points. One, that the borders of Cameroon, the borders of Ambazonia, the borders of Cameroon, just like the borders of Israel and Palestine, are non-negotiable. The borders of Ambazonia are contained in the Milner's Treaty of 1931. So for Cameroon to claim part of Ambazonia is being short-sighted. The second point I'll make is that although the crimes of Putin are enormous in Ukraine, but the leveling of homes by Netanyahu, the killing of Mami Apia by Paul Biya, makes Putin look like a saint in front of these two barbarians. The third point I want to make is that Cameroon is shivering because, bear in mind, business people from Israel are the mentors of the brutal barbarian Biya in Cameroon. They are their trainers, they are their advisors, and they do everything for that genocide regime. And as such, this development in the international system to recognize Palestine by states and not yet formally by the UN is being watched by Cameroon. And it should be watched more so by Ambazonians, because just as you mentioned, the British are at the origin of the predicament of Palestine. The British are at the origin of the predicament of Ambazonia. The British were at the origin of the predicament of Somaliland. The British were at the origin of the predicament of Ireland. Today, Ireland haven't suffered as a colony of the United Kingdom, just like Ambazonia, decided to take up arms to fight because they were an indigenous people. They had their own territory prior to the Norwegians coming to Ireland, and the British only came after. And as such, the British fought to keep Ireland for 800 years. That's to tell you that the Irish fought for their independence for 800 years. But it never stopped any generation from claiming to become British. And nowadays in Ireland, even though we are neighbors, but if you talk about Britain or British, people just look at you as, are you kidding me? It is the same. It's to tell Cameroon, they are dealing with an ideology. If they kill General Efang, they have killed the body. But the ideals of Ambazonia are imbued in every generation, in the yet unborn. And as such, we will fight Cameroon to the last person to maintain our territory that has its borders We will fight Cameroon to maintain our identity. We will fight Cameroon to continuously emphasize to them that the 2 cubes of sugar that you thought you're going to do away with them, dissolve them in your basin of water, they are going nowhere, because the Irish never relented their efforts. The Irish have, through their sufferings under the British, just like the Palestinians and Ambazonians and other people that were colonized by the British have suffered, decided that, well, after our independence, we're going to stand with those that seek for their own dignity. We're going to align with people that seek to establish their own political, economic, and social future. And as such, you would realize that the Irish standing for South Africa during the apartheid years and even post-apartheid, it is an open secret that the current South African constitution was drawn up in Talbot Street in Dublin. It is an open secret that institutions in South Africa were drafted in Dublin. And as such, Dublin or Ireland has always stood for the underdogs. Standing with underdogs aligns with Irish values of self-determination, of dignity, of upholding human rights. And to side with Palestine, even though they sided with Israel in the beginning, is a continuation of these deep-seated distrust for the British, because through their empire, through their colonial adventure, the British have been very good not to grant independence, but to grant what we call half-baked systems, or at times they just sell them off, like they did with the French in Ambazonia, where they sold Ambazonia to the French. But Cameroon and the French, your days are numbered. Once we start spending the liberation tax, Cameroon will know who owns Ambazonia. So from this little history of Ireland and how the Irish uphold the dignity of humans, how the Irish value a people, how the Irish resonate with how people struggle on earth, and based on their own experience of struggling under the British, that led to the Irish being at the forefront of granting Palestinians what they have longed for decades. That led the Irish to stand for Palestine. And what are we doing? And as I said, we are engaging with these countries, both at the higher level, but also at the local level. And we encourage every Ambazonian, wherever you are, to participate, to engage, not to petition, but to engage and influence. If you are outside, you cannot influence. You can only influence from the inside. If you do so wherever you are engaged, wherever you reside, you are going to have more political purchase in order to push Ambazonians' cause, in order to push Ambazonians' quest for freedom ever closer. I think the president can chime in more on the trajectory of Norway and how it came to this position. I hear.
Reach one, VP, reach one. Spokesman, you have the last word. Once I speak, I'll give you the floor to have the last word. And
Mr. President, I think let me chime in, and then you have the last word so that you can help us.
Okay.
What I wanted to add is that the conflict in Palestine, I did an outing about 1 hour outing when this conflict between Hamas and Israel started. We talked about the root cause of this, and I talked more detail about the Balfour Declaration during that outing to educate our people about the consequences of the British policy to decide to create this. They actually wanted, when the British were looking for where should they create the state of Palestine, Ambazonia to be, it's very interesting to know that they actually were looking at Angola as well, not only Palestine, but they were also looking at to create the state of Israel in the current, to split Angola into two, to create the state of Israel in Ambazonia. So most of Israelis now, if that decision had gone forward, then Israel would have been created in part of, Angola would have been divided into two, and Israel will now be in the continent. That notwithstanding, this conflict has gone on for so long. Many wars have been fought. Israel has conquered territories within Palestine. In the 1967 war, Israel gained new territories. They include the Sinai Peninsula, which it traded for peace in 1979, the Golan Heights, they captured the West Bank, they captured the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem in the 6-day war. Cameroon has never gone to war with Ambazonia and captured any of Ambazonian territory. What we all need to know is, I've said this and we're going to, the failure of a people, when the people of Palestine had the land, even before the Israeli came, they failed to organize themselves, they failed to develop themselves, they failed to build themselves, they failed to build a state for themselves. Even before the Balfour Declaration, Ambazonians, they gave us through trusteeship, through the mandate, and then through trusteeship. We failed to develop ourselves. We failed to build ourselves. When we left the Eastern House and declared self-governance, we build institutions without protecting them. There are consequences for any people that cannot protect themselves. When the Jewish people move in, when they gave them a homeland through the Balfour Declaration, and they moved themselves all across the globe, people that were homeless, they decided to do one thing. The first thing they did was to build power. They've been given a homeland. They wanted to build dignity for their people. They used the education, they used their wealth, they used their knowledge to build a society and to give the Jewish people the dignity they've never had. They've always lived as humiliated people. They used their pain, their humiliation, and they summoned a determination that has never been seen before by any other state. My appeal to the Ambazonian people.
Spokes, one moment before you go to your appeal, please. I just wanted to add something to what you are saying, and which is consistent with what the Vice President has said and what the Deaf Chair was trying to call in to participate. So I'll possibly allow him call in. But please, before you make that appeal, one of the things the Jews have also done is to do exactly what the Vice President has raised. They have integrated themselves in every socio-economic and political structures across the globe and influence power. Everywhere you go, in the biggest businesses, in the corridors of power in the United States, somebody is there from the Jewish community to speak for them. I just want to emphasize this point that the Vice President is making in passing, that we should not adopt these short-term, shortcut approaches to our freedom. You cannot leverage power simply by petitioning. Go ahead, sir.
That was my second point, but thanks for bringing that up earlier, Ellie. Is that the Ambazonian people across the globe and on the ground, the Jewish people across the globe, even in Ireland, they have created what they call the Jewish lobby. It's the single most powerful organization in the world, including in the United Nations, including in the US Senate, in the US Congress. It influences every decision. Every president to be elected, you must stand up for the Jewish state or you will not be elected. I suggest every Ambazonian should read a book written by Professor John Mearsheimer called The Israeli Lobby. It's the most powerful book written about the power of influence. So we should, as the president has said, we should not only build power on the ground, which is my appeal. We should help the Ambazonian people. We should help the Ambazonian forces. We should build power for our people. Our existence should never again be threatened by anyone. Not to talk of a cave people like Cameroon. We failed to do that when we left the Eastern House. Cameroon took advantage of it, and today we are paying the price. The Israeli had a chance. They gave them a piece of land. It says, this is your state. They have built what no one else has ever done in that part of the globe. Even though today they are abusing that power and they are abusing that influence. But the first thing they did was to make sure they are never threatened. That's why they are always insisting. They are using the threat that Israel faces as their own mobilization or their own communication strategy. We can also use the same, the threat to the existence of Ambazonia. But for us, we must help our people to be able to protect themselves. We must help our people to be able to defend themselves. We must help our people to make sure that Cameroon never threatens us again. I know this is something the president has talked for so many times, but it's something we need to emphasize. It's very critical, even as we work towards recognition, our ability to prove to the international community that first, we can do the best we can with what we have, but that we have a dogged determination to make sure that the Bulu barbarians will never threaten to burn another 1,200 villages or kill another 40,000 Ambazonians. That is our responsibility. First, as Ambazonians. Second, the diasporans. All Ambazonians in the diaspora, just as all Palestinians, have played a critical role in altering policies in the West. We Ambazonians in the diaspora, as the Vice President has said, we have a moral, national patriotic responsibility for those who left back home. For those who left back home. We owe them so much. They are paying a price. The best we can do it is to support them with the policies that the leadership is providing. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Mr. VP, for this exchange.
Thank you.
The dev chair is on the call. He wants to participate. It looks like we are gingering the dev chair and others. So I will come back. Dev chair, unmute yourself. All right.
Hello, Mr. President.
Yes, you are live. You are live, boy. So you can chime in.
Oh my goodness, your discussions got me up.
Yes, come in. The Vice President is listening. The spokes is listening.
I want to thank the VP spokes. This has been a very, very rich and enlightening conversation. The most disappointing thing is that it had to take thousands of deaths before the herd mentality in the West got broken. They have one foreign policy, all of them. They follow one beat, one drum, and it had to take the massacres and murders in the tens of thousands for a break to happen within them. It is something that at this particular moment I am really in awe and in shock that the to allow American foreign policy to be decided at the Elysee Palace and Whitehall. And they are at the brink. If not, they have lost Africa because of that. It is a real disappointment when I saw the South African submission at The Hague. And I sat there as an African and I asked myself how those who should be batting for Africa are expending so much goodwill, so much effort, jumping over genocides happening in their own backyard to go and parade in front of the world, batting for others. The South Africans cannot claim ignorance about the suffering and the massacres going on in Ambazonia. They cannot claim ignorance of what is happening in Congo. How is it that the plight of these Africans does not register to the same degree for them? And that is we Africans. So while I empathize at this particular moment, there is nothing satisfying about any of these developments where I'm concerned. Where is Laurent Gbagbo? Where is Laurent Gbagbo? Where is Gaddafi? Have these people done 1/10 or 1,000,000 of the disasters that are occurring in Palestine and in Europe? Gbagbo is in prison. Gaddafi is dead because of an idea that they are massacring their people. They are slaughtering their people. While the Mr. Paul Bias are accepted, while the Americans roll them the red carpet, and the Europeans, we the people, we must rise up as the Ambazonians are rising up, and ordinary Africans and all over the world must rise up for Africa and these struggles that are going on in Africa. It is our only way out, because depending on declarations from these people, I don't think Rwanda even resulted in a declaration for them. So we have to form that alliance, the alliance that has pushed the Irish government and the others to break ranks with the people, with the grassroots. And they must realize the genocides that are being fostered in Africa. Okay, Mr. President, spokes VP, una please the name.
Thanks a lot, DevShare. Thanks for coming in. Passionate. See you later. All right. Let me. All right. Just leave It looks like we are just the two of us remaining. Our spokesman has stepped out. VP, let me just, I will say something very short about Norway, but I would like to say something about the concept of power, which the spokesman has eloquently spoken about. You know, when we insist on arming ourselves, people think, you see, we think violence. People see arming ourselves as simply an art of, wanting war. No, it's based on the concept of power. The story of Israel is very important. Immediately, the Palestine was partitioned, Israel declared its independence. Before that declaration, the United States was worried because it had seen the preparation of other Arab states against that possibility. And if Israel will be able to withstand, any kind of Arab onslaught, Israel declared its independence. And since then, it has never looked back in ensuring that its power was unrivaled. It is the only nuclear power in the Middle East. It has continuously developed its power. It has continuously developed its alliances to be able to ensure that it is powerful enough. Unfortunately, as the spokesman has stated, it has used this power in also ensuring that its own security is at risk. When Ambazonians left the Eastern House of Assembly, Ambazonians have been more philosophical in ensuring that they can realize their dreams. They think by dreaming, they were almost like the kind of Martin Luther approach, this having a dream without building the kinds of institutions that will sustain that dream. Ambazonians have believed that the justness of their cause alone, the legal validity of their case, the historical validity of their claim is strong enough to overcome the ruthlessness of a determined adversary. That is not true. My experience in the past 35 years has shown me that every time we have made any claim, no matter how small, Cameroon has developed a big picture approach. If you say, oh no, we want a university, Cameroon is not looking at the university. Cameroon is like, what does that mean? After university, what next? If you talk about anything, your educational system or your legal tradition, Cameroon is not simply looking at the law or educational system. It's like, this is going towards independence. And Cameroon comes in with power to suppress us immediately. That is why in the last 7 years, we have spoken nothing other than shoring the Amazonian power. Because apart from living in a neighborhood of hawks, we understand that historically, if we had spent just 1 year strengthening ourselves, PowerCam would still be around. Our road infrastructures will still be around. Our banks will still be around. All the parastatals that drove our economy will still be around. Our international airport will still be around. The Tico Seaport will still be around. The Victoria Deep Seaport will still be around. What were we doing? We were dreaming while awake. What are we left with? Edea, Douala, Yaoundé, French, everything about us taken away by Cameroon. But let me compare that to the Norwegian journey. The population of Norway is 5.5 million. We are almost 10 million. Population of Ambazonia, 10 million. Norway has a GDP of about 580 billion US dollars. It's one of the richest countries in the world. All the resources that Norway has are the same resources that we have in Ambazonia. If you look at Norway's history, Norway was almost 400 years in union with Denmark. The Norwegian and the Danish language are similar. Norway was almost 100 years in union with Sweden. The Norwegian and the Swedish language, is also almost similar. Currency, the same, until the euro came into town. But what is important here is that why did Norway not simply surrender itself to Denmark? Why did Norway not simply surrender itself in a union with Sweden despite the similarities? Why did it have to declare its independence and assert its sovereignty over its own territory? Why is is Scotland, with devolution of powers, democracy, the respect of human rights, not simply surrender itself to the United Kingdom? It's fighting for independence because people have pride reflected in their identity, and that no matter the conditions of luxury that people find themselves under dominion, they always seek to make sure that they have a sense of pride in independence. 1940, Hitler rolled tanks into Oslo and took over Norway. The king and his son escaped into a city called Molde and then later escaped to London, where they were at the Buckingham Palace. And Hitler started bombing London. And they moved up to Scotland. And from exile, they organized the resistance against Hitler. Hitler appointed a Norwegian, Quisling, as the prime minister, a former officer in the Norwegian force. Why did Norwegians not simply say, "Oh my God, it's our own son who is the prime minister, so we should acquiesce to the occupation of our land"? Norwegian teachers rose up when Hitler attempted to modify the Norwegian education. They rose up. Hitler, the Germans arrested over 500 and took them up to the north of Norway that was very cold. The underground resistance raged on until Norway was liberated. So, union with Denmark, they didn't give up. Union with Sweden, they didn't give up. Occupation under Germany, they didn't give up. And today, those who didn't give up will look back with pride of the decision they made. And all those enablers in Norway, all those collaborators, all those colonial apologists, their great-grandchildren have their heads buried in sand like ostrich in utter shame. And today, Norway collaborates with Denmark, with Sweden, like nothing happened. So that is the trajectory that the vice president has explained with respect to Ireland. And that's the similar trajectory that you find in here. I'm amazed by this history. Every 8th of May, which is the date that Norway was liberated from German occupation, every constitution came into force. The Norwegians go out, children, to remind these children of the sacrifices made to be able to have this country. And I was a participant during the 17th of May celebration just last week. I listened to the speech of one lady It touched me. And she said, don't take your freedom for granted. Don't take your freedom for granted. And after she was done, we met along the sidewalk and I shook hands and I said, good speech. And I said, I quite love the part when you said people shouldn't take their freedom for granted. She said, yes, because she has lived in many places where there is no freedom. And she understands what it means to have it. And you can lose it within a twinkle of an eye. Ambazonians, we must build power. We must leverage power in all its facets. And to be able to make sure that an inch of our territory is never threatened by anyone, any nation, any coalition, big or small. We must develop a long-term approach to our freedom and avoid shortcuts and learn from the history of others who have made it and learn to persevere, to sacrifice, to do the hard job that is required to be done by every people who face a brutal neighbor determined to prevail over you, even using genocide. VP, you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you have captured why we fight and the approach and policies of the Ambazonia Governing Council. Ambazonians, we have prevailed not because we are too strong. We are not yet strong. But Cameroon has got the message that in its history, it would never, ever try to rule Ambazonia again. That is why our policies have been designed, as the president has said, not for warmongering, but to make sure that during our quest for freedom and after independence, every Ambazonian will be armed because we reside in a rough neighborhood, east and west. That would give us what I term the Israelite advantage. That would make it clear, as the president has said, that any coalition, big or small, can never threaten Ambazonia. Ambazonians, that can be done, and that will be done in the territory. But also, you need to engage the political systems, the social and civil systems in your country of residence in order to start the journey to the long-term approach to our freedom. Because even after freedom, we need to have partners. We need to influence decisions, just like the Palestinians are doing, just like the Israelites have done and they continuously do in different capitals around the world, because they are embedded in the system. You cannot change a system if you only petition. You cannot change a system if you depend on sympathy. You only change a system if you have political purchase, if you militate for that political, economic, social, civil system. So, and as such, I believe in the Ambazonian spirit. I believe in our quest for freedom. I know Cameroon is shattered. We only have one thing to do: to make sure that our power is unrivaled, to make sure that all the infiltrators, all the enablers, and all the barbarians that are present in Ambazonia, they pack out or we send them in body bags. Hail, hail this land of glory.
Your place day.
Your place over there. Oh, my place day.
Shake, my shake. Place day.
Yeah, shake,
Amber for life.
Yeah, Amber for life. Big time. We either live free or we die fighting, and our young generation would continue.
There is nothing more precious in life than freedom.
Your freedom is in your hands.
There is nothing more precious in life than freedom.
Your freedom is in your hands. commander of this revolution to let you know that we will defeat Cameroon. We will not only defeat Cameroon, we will make it impossible for Cameroon again to ever invade our land.
Because this is the appointed generation. And we are going to see Biafra.
the Ambazonia, special loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us the freedom. I led us to the hero who called the lonely gather. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in a nation, flowing with the holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meet in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meet in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation.
Good morning to you, fellow Ambazonians. Good morning to you, our brave people. Good morning to you, our loving people. Good morning to you all. It is very easy to start a war, but it's very difficult to end a war. It is very easy to start a war, but it's very difficult to end a war. There are two types of wars, according to experts. There is preventive wars. Nations go to war. They take preemptive measures to go to war. Most often, most wars are wars of opportunities. Mr. Bia's war on the Ambazonian people is a war of opportunity. After more than 4 decades of political failure, economic failure, social failure, governance failure, failure in social development, failure in providing even basic services to the Camerooners. Bia needed a way out. He needed an exit. He needed an escape from responsibilities. From the Cameroonese people holding him responsible for 4 decades of failure. The war on the Ambazonian people, it's an escape strategy from 4 decades of failure. The war on the Ambazonian people, it's an opportunity, according to the Bia gospel, to crush the resistance. Hello? Yeah, I'm live right now on my YouTube channel. I don't know if you're aware of that. So Mr. Bia's war, it's a war of opportunity for Cameroon to permanently end the protest. Use the same strategy they used on Cameroonese nationalists of the UPC to crush the protest, conquer the Ambazonian people, just like they've captured the state of Cameroon. Yesterday, there is a devastating revelation from a top middleman of Mr. Bia and the Prime Minister, calling them out that they have lost the war. They should accept reality, that it's not too late for Mr. Bia and the colonial Prime Minister, Mr. Diongote, for Mr. Tanganji Paul, for those that are living in denial, for the top military generals and commanders of the Cameroonese military to accept the reality, and they should stop lying to the people of Cameroon, to themselves, and to the international community. They have lost the war. It is time for them to accept their mistake and to humbly accept negotiations. Mr. Ellie Smith. Ellie Smith is a renowned journalist. That's a reporter for Bloomberg. He's a middleman working directly with Mr. Bia and the Prime Minister and the military to corrupt, to bribe, to buy Ambazonian fighters, to help them to accept the DDR program. Ellie Smith also is someone who hangs around Samuel Sako and all the others that are now working for the political transition in Cameroon. Ellie Smith is someone that I have personally interviewed. I had an interview with Ellie Smith, I think in 2018, when I run my program, the Southern Cameroon Leadership Strategy. Ellie Smith also works directly with other middlemen. He's in constant movement and association with the Bishop Andrew Nkier and the moderator of the Presbyterian Church. So these are some of the key middlemen moving around both the diaspora and around the Ambazonian territory, carrying huge sums of money to play the regime's dirty game in using bribery and corruption as a solution to the conflict. Yesterday, Mr. Smith is very frustrated with the actions of the regime. Mr. Smith is very frustrated with the slow pace to resolve the conflict. And he sent out a long tweet which every Ambazonian should read. It's an eye-opener of what's going on within the system, the cracks within the system, the frustration within the system, the deniability within the system. Here is what Mr. Smith said. Dialogue is the only solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. That's Ambazonia. Those who say peace has returned to the northwest and southwest regions, God is watching. We have been at war for years now, yet some claim the war in the northwest and southwest regions is over, and even go to the extra mile to say peace is back. For those secreting such odious lies, I have no hard feelings against them. Now, this is the only benchmark to measure if peace is truly back. I mean, to those who adore that mindset, the only measurement to ascertain that peace is truly back is for those who are in denial to take their vehicles, to take their cars and drive alone from Yaoundé to Mamfe and Bamenda and back to Yaoundé. Let me read this again. Very interesting. The only measurement to ascertain that peace is truly back is for those who are in denial to take their vehicles and drive alone from Yaoundé to Mamfe and Bamenda and back to Yaoundé. If they do that and return to Yaoundé alive, it means peace is truly back. Please, when traveling to Mamfe and Bamenda, don't take your security forces and don't use any tanks or APC, armored personnel carriers. Don't carry troops as your medium of transportation. Travel there alone, as if it was the case before 2017. This is Ellie Smith calling Diongote, calling Mr. Paul Biya, calling Atanga Njipor, calling all the top CPDM officials, those who are claiming they have won the war and peace has returned, he challenges them to take a test, a benchmark measurement. If peace has truly returned, if the war is over, if Mr. Biya has achieved victory and has crushed Ambazonian liberators, they should take their personal vehicles and drive by themselves without the armor cars from Yaoundé to Mamfe, from Mamfe to Bamenda, from Bamenda back to Yaoundé. That is the only test. Fellow Ambazonians, the cracks, they don't open inside the regime. Be very easy for any coward who they call it a head of state, a nation, for start a war. May be very difficult for any war. Now, 2 wars, according to the research we don't make them, 2 types of wars we country they declare. A country, they go for war for 2 specific reasons. They use war, what they call and say preventive war. That means say that they use war for prevent some bigger thing, make it not happen. And the second type of war, now which they call and say war of opportunity. Mr. Biya a war of Ambazonia, now a war of opportunity. After 4 decades of disastrous failure, humiliating failure, 4 decades of poverty, corruption, 4 decades of, say after 4 decades, Cameroon no fit produce aspirin or paracetamol or give the Cameroonese people the water. Mr. Biya, no one make the Cameroonese people the wholly accountable for 4 decades of failure, for why the country don't remain backwards after 4 decades in power. Mr. Biya need an escape. The war for Ambazonia, a war of political opportunity, now an escape from a political failure. A war for Ambazonia, now a war of political opportunity for permanently end which they call and say any form of protest for the occupied territory by killing mass number of people, for burn down villages, for rape, so that because which the things that they be doing for the Bamileke people them, where they kill all the nationalists and they crush the UPC them. The things that if they duplicate, when I remember Mr. Biya be one of the people them way they be the architect for the Bamileke, for the massacre of the Cameroonese nationalists. So if one use that same strategy for Cameroon for permanently end anything, what they call and say Anglophone uprising. As when I don't see from 1960, so to you can reach your present day, the people of Cameroon, after since they keep 400,000 Bamileke them, got people they had them, put them for streets. Since that time, the Cameroonese people them, they become like sheep. I'm not talking Cameroonese people, they be sheep. But in their thinking, because the dictator they are thinking, now for make the people them, make them be so submissive, so timid, so fearful, because of what they be doing for Bamileke people. They want to do for the Ambazonian people them as an opportunity for permanently turn the people into submissive beings. Human beings, where they only exist, but they don't get any courage, they don't get any confidence, they don't get any self-worth, they don't even know the meaning and the purpose of life anymore. So it will be now a war of political opportunity. Opportunity for escape a failure, an opportunity for take over Ambazonia, turn them just like Camerooners, so that permanently they will conquer the people them once and for all. And for the rest of the Ambazonian people then, they don't be conquered by Cameroon, and there will be never again any Ambazonia will ever dare to rise up against the occupier. Now, it don't backfire. Mr. Biya underestimate the generation. Diongute underestimate what this generation be made up of. They really underestimate who will be. They think it will be the generation of the Fonchas, the Munas, and the Frondis. They think it will be the generation of the Kongtan Elas. They think it will be the generation of the Munzos. They think it will be the generation of the Anyangwes. They think it will be the generation of the SCNC. They underestimate this generation. So their strategy for use extreme violence, for use genocide, for use massacres, for use scorched earth policy, it don't backfire. It don't fail. They discover now, say, the Ambazonian people, they be untouchable. They be unconquerable. They be undefeatable. They now understand. Say they don't get weighty it take for conquer the people then. That's why they quickly shift and they bring in the Ellie Smith. They bring in the bishop. They bring in the moderator. They rally all these people then. In the past, bribery and corruption don't work. You find the key actors and figures and you use tribal networks. You isolate them, you corrupt them, you bribe them, you compromise them, and then you weaken their legitimacy. You weaken their character. Basically, castrate them. Okay? You politically castrate them. Just like they don't do them for all the others who they rise up before. Just like they do them for Frondi, they politically castrate Frondi. If you don't see them, no person since then, except this handful, they don't stand up for speak the truth, for defend the rights of our people then. So their bribery and corruption, it don't fail them. They realize and say no matter how much they bribe, no matter how much they try for corrupt, even forces, will get a lot of audios with Ellie Smith, they call fighters for corrupt them, for bribe them, for move them from the battlefield. Including these church people then. Now themselves, it don't touch them. Now they speak out. Now Ellie Smith did now the challenge Paul Biya. Now Ellie Smith, of all persons, now they tell them say they did live in denial. and say that they do not propaganda. Now Ellie Smith, now the right, say Bia they live in denial, Diongute they live in denial, Atanganji they live in denial, the military they live in denial, the Manu CPDM elites, the Meme CPDM elites, the Fako CPDM elites, the Coupe CPDM elites, the Indian CPDM elites, the Mezam CPDM elites, the Momo CPDM elites, the Ngoketunjia CPDM elites, the Bui CPDM elites, the Boyo CPDM elites, all these elites, they did lie just for keep making money out of the war, just for maintain their positions. So they go tell lies, they send out fake reports, will be contrary to the reality, just for continuously milking the system, because the war now a war of opportunity. Now an opportunity for them for make as much money as possible. Now an opportunity for them for re-establish their political roots. Because the events of today, they uproot yesterday's establishment. The events of today, they challenge yesterday's establishment. Now a complete shift in their public posture. Wait till this one they tell all now. If the right-hand man for Diongote, if he come off outside, can lament, if the right-hand man for Paul Biya, if he come off outside, can cry and shame the devil itself, then what do you think about all the other small nyam focus for outside here? Because this one are their right-hand man on the territory, for the colonial capital, for the colonial state, where they get breakfast with the Prime Minister and Mr. Biya. Now in this, they can't lament, they can't cry. They write down all these things and challenge Mr. Biya himself. If when they claim say that war don't finish, the only way we will not prove say that war don't finish, we not drive, we not carry una moto, we not drive from Yaoundé, and when we not carry this motor for drive, maybe we not carry army or gendarme or police for protect una. Maybe we not carry ammo car, maybe for front and so one be for back. You Paul Biya, you Diongote, you Atanganji, you Lele Lafrique, you all the ministers them, Ngole, all Wuna, you Mengot, you Tabetando, you Mundi, una carry moto, una shidon inside moto, una buy petrol, una put them inside, una drive that moto from Yaoundé. Una go reach, una drive and reach for Manfe. Una go through Manfe, Kumba. Una drive sote, una go reach Kumba. And then una drive from Kumba, una go reach Manfe. When una reach for Manfe, una drive that motor to go reach for Ekok. Then una come out for Ekok, una come for Manfe, drive from Manfe to Bamenda. From Bamenda, una drive back to Yaoundé. If una reach Yaoundé alive, then una go make a conclusion and proclaim say the world don't finish. Ellie Smith, he tell Mr. Bia, tell Jongute, tell Atanganji, tell Mengot and the Tabetandos, say me they take this test. Now a top middleman of the regime, the one that they carry them for a helicopter, enter from Ambazonia, send them inside communities, send them to meet up the Sakos, the Christianos, the Magbaretas, the Sikor. Now Ellie Smith, they can lament and shame the devil itself, Mr. Bia. Now Ellie Smith, they can challenge Mr. Bia, challenge the Ongute, and challenge all these nyamfukas and outside that make noise. They don't give them a challenge. It's that the test that, now the only measurement that with any person, if he talks it, the war don't finish. And since they not fit take that test, he advised and said, man, no finish. Very interesting. I don't always talk. The truth will set you free. Yeah. The truth will set you free. Now in this, just read them again once more. Dialogue. Now the only solution for the crisis for the Northwest and Southwest. The people who talk say peace, it don't come back for Northwest and Southwest region. Got the watchman. We don't get this war to go on for years now. Some people they continue for talk say the war for Southwest, for Northwest and Southwest, it don't finish. And they even continue for talk say peace, it don't come back. For the people, the way that they make this kind big fat lie. I don't get bad for them all. I don't get anything against them. Now, the only thing where they fit do for tell all man say this war don't finish. And peace don't come back. I mean say for those on the way that they lie. Now the only thing is what they fit do. The only thing where we feel measure and believe say peace, it don't truly come back. Now for these people that they deny, where they let me say they deny, say war not there again and peace don't come. Make they take their own motor, they drive themselves from Yaoundé to Mamfe and to Bamenda, and then they come back for Yaoundé alive. Ellie Smith. I'm not being saying that so you funny. Yes. When I drive, the only way now for drive from Yaoundé to Mamfe to Bamenda, and then when I come back, if when I do and then when I come back for Yaoundé alive, then it really means say peace, it don't come back. And then he talks say, when I want go for, when I want travel, when I want drive down a motor by ourselves, for go Mamfe and for go for Bamenda, make una not take any security, gendarme, army, police, any military, make carry una go. Muna not carry any ammo car. Muna not carry no military. for transport una do una self, una travel by una self as it be day before the war start. Mr. Elizabeth, it continue, very interesting. Make Mr. Bia, Diongute and the regime, may they not feel shame for accepting that they make mistake by giving the wrong report, by taking a wrong action. Make them not feel ashamed for accept now say it been a mistake. Because the reality on the ground for the Ambazonia territory will be completely different from waiting Mr. Bia, Diongote, and all the colonial CPDM elites. They tell the people of Cameroon and they tell the world. He said that they lie to themselves. He talks about this one. Now advice. We the game for those foolish people then. We the one keep their post. He said this one advice. We the game for those lie people then. We the one continue for make money. It's a big palaver. They for Northwest and Southwest regions with their economy. He talks, they say, make they take this advice. The big American general will lead the war for Iraq and also for Afghanistan. He talks, General David Petraeus, he talks, you cannot kill your way out of an insurgency. An advisor will give them. He continue for talk say, if the United States, the most strongest, powerful country, militarily and with big money for the history of mankind, if he believes, say, if he dialogue with the Taliban and pull out of Afghanistan, accept after 20 years with the United States, it lost $4 trillion for their useless adventure for Afghanistan. If they first go dialogue with the Taliban and then they pull out of Afghanistan, Ellie Smith talks, say, what about the primitive people of Cameroon, where they get nothing? Ambazonians, I want Tankuna. I want truly salute all our people there for standing firm, for standing for the truth, for standing for dignity for the Ambazonian people, for standing for the right of self-determination of the Ambazonian people, for standing for the protection of our people there. Will not be given, will not be give up with all the temptations from the middlemen. Today, the middlemen themselves, they don't accept the mistakes of their masters. They don't start for confess. And the middlemen, then now that they openly advise their paymasters, say, "Una be make mistake. Make una not be ashamed for accept say una be make mistake. It never be too late for accept una mistake. Una not be ever win those people then. Una not fit. Una not fit ever win that war. And the more una try for fight am, and the more Cameroon itself, it will be destroyed. He say una accept the reality. Okay. We don't come this far. Now because every Ambazonia don't come to the conclusion the only way for our people then for secure a better future, live a better life, get human respect, live in dignity, live in comfort, get the basic things for life. Clean drinking water, constant, consistent flow of electricity, better roads, better school for our children, safe environments, simple opportunities for our people to have a say in their system of education, their legal system, their way of life, and our ability to govern ourselves and manage the affairs for the Ambazonian people. Your resistance, your resilience, your determination, your commitment, now you don't make even the top middlemen, they don't speak out against the occupier, against their masters. Now them don't shame them and they tell them to accept the defeat. Accept the defeat. Accept the defeat. May God bless our people then. Una continue for pay una liberation tax. Cameroon time don't come to an end. Make every person start for prepare for the takeover. The time they come. The collapse of the regime. The clock, the tick. Time. The collapse, the come. It will happen fast. Not leave them. Make it take you unaware. When America they woke up one day, they get for pull out of Iraq, of Afghanistan. It take the world by surprise. The time will come. The clock, the tick. The regime will collapse like that. We must prepare. I don't sing up for now. I will continue for singing. You don't beat Cameroon. You don't defeat Cameroon. No, defeat them, beat them, and lost the territory because you're not prepared. The time for takeover don't reach. Last night, or early this morning, no, last night, yes, early yesterday morning, I sent out an audio for tell all commanders, every commander must do everything humanly possible. Forget 50 AKs for your barrack. 50. You don't get 50 AK, you never start. Every commander must start for prepare for the takeover. Prepare for the takeover. Every barrack, every commander for stay alive, every general for stay alive, you need 50 AK. Just for you and your forces and your community for stay alive. You need 50 AK. 5 machine guns and 3 RPGs. Do whatever it takes. Forget the money. For arm yourselves. Not kill Ambazonians. Forget the money. Do whatever it takes. As long as you don't kill our people. In the process, forget the money. Do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Forget 50 AKs, 5 machine guns, and 3 RPGs. The only way for stop all these weaver birds, these compromise agents, now for change the noise on the territory. As I talked 2 days ago, we need 500 well-armed and trained professional forces within the next few months on the ground. 500. Ambazonia must start to prepare for the takeover. The Ambazonian people must start to prepare for the takeover. All the generals and commanders where they did for the big cities, all the big companies they will not collect liberation tax and put these 50 acres on a barrack. If you do operate around Fako, you do operate around Meme, all the big companies they will not collect the liberation tax. Will not arm ourselves to the teeth and prepare for the takeover. The Ambazonia Governing Council did do its best to move the process for all forward. We must start for prepare for the takeover. They don't start for confess. They don't start for beg. They don't start for admit the defeat. Take over your territory. Don't leave them ever again. After all these sacrifices, not leave and make the 10 things around and can bring nyama nyama inside the whole process. And then bring some kind things in. We go make them Ambazonians. They go only get at 20% of which they want. We don't sacrifice, we don't pay the price, we don't die, we don't sweat, we don't go through all sort of pain. Take the victory. Take the victory. Multinational companies and all big Ambazonian companies, the plenty inside the territory for pay the liberation tax if we reach up to 1 billion. Only for Bamenda alone, the population of Bamenda and the companies that they inside Bamenda alone, if they pay their liberation tax, only for Bamenda alone, Ambazonia fee raise more than 2 billion. 1 billion, 100 million will provide 100 acres. 200 million will provide 200 acres. 300 million will provide 300. 400 million will provide 400. 500 million will provide 500. So a billion, it will take you to 1,000. Now what you need on that? 500 will get a half. 1,000 well-trained forces. The game is over. 500, La Republic will surrender. They will not go fit, take over the territory and provide the kind of security will be needed. 1,000 forces, well-trained, now will fit take over the territory and defend the major cities with 1,000 Ambazonian, well-trained Ambazonian soldiers. With the one the way they did now for the periphery, they go keep security for the villages. Now they work this ahead. I remind you now. Law number 1. A driver with the drive for inside Ambazonia. If you never pay your liberation tax, not drive. That law number 1 that. If you never pay your liberation tax, whether you drive a taxi, you drive na your own personal motor, you drive na some person motor, or you drive for some person. Whether you drive na public transport, you drive an agency. If that agency never pay a liberation tax, you that driver will drive that motor, not drive that motor. When the forces they catch you, you go pay that liberation tax 2 times more, 3 times more. And law number 1 that. Not drive or you never pay a liberation tax. Law number 2. This one also apply for Okada. If you not pay liberation tax, not put your Okada for Ambazonia Road. Law number 2. If you be Okada driver, if you never pay, not drive. Law number 2. Not carry any person who never pay liberation tax. Because when they stop, now you the driver, they will hold you responsible while you carry person who never pay liberation tax. Number 1, make sure say the motor with the driver, they don't pay liberation tax for that motor. The driver don't pay. The passenger with the carrier must pay. So if you be driver, you carry passenger who never pay. When they reach for control, una must pay before una come off that place. We need to beg no person anymore. We don't educate una, explain them, inform una, sensitize them. No man, we not get time again for beg you for be free. Freedom now by force. Because when the Republic can kill, they need beg you. They need spare any person. The freedom now by force. Because now war of liberation. You pay or you face the consequences. Pay or when you reach for road, they move you, they keep you for road. So which one you want to choose them? 10,000 for man picking for the whole year, for the entire territory, and 5,000 for woman. And number 4 month this. Please pay your liberation tax for your own safety, for your own convenience. Make them not harass you somewhere. May they not hold you somewhere. You don't need them. No man no need them. And not call me. Not call any person. Pay your liberation tax. The freedom now, not by force. We must be free. We not get any time for debates. We not get any time for arguments. We must free our people and end the pain, the suffering, and the destruction with La Republique in the course of our land. The end don't come for them. Before they want go, they go make sure they kill more and destroy more as punishment. So we defeat them. That's why we must prepare. Make all commanders, they enforce the liberation tax. I want to go after all companies. Every business from Ambazonia must pay a liberation tax. The next 3 months, we will be very aggressive for implementing the liberation tax. So if you get a business, just call me one time, pay a liberation tax before they can surprise you. If you get a business, just call, pay a liberation tax. I'm talking about the kind of business this will get them. How much is my liberation tax? You pay them in advance. If you the build house, not start foundation, where you never pay the liberation building permit. Not start for build house. If you don't start for build house, you never pay the liberation building permit. They will stop you. We must do whatever it takes for put 500 to 1,000 well-armed soldiers from Ambazonia for the takeover. The mistake with Foncha and all the rest they make up for we for be for this position who will face a genocide. It must stop with us. We'll not come this far and then we'll leave them. They can't give half solution. It will happen because we fail to provide the necessary forces for take over the territory and give the people them the sovereignty. You don't defeat La Republique. You don't beat La Republique. You don't shame the devil. Now not the time for take over. I hope say Witty Ellis Smith, you don't talk. A big sign of encouragement for all your sacrifices. So take credit, be proud, and celebrate your success. Which they talk. Ambazonia, shake day, shake ide, shake day. See ya. Shake day. You tell me, shake day. Shake day na for La Republique. Shake day na for Mvomeka. Ambazonia. And this. Shake. No day. Ambazonia. Shake in no day. The only place where shake day of La Republique. Now good night.
Ambazonia Defense Forces, the vanguards of the Ambazonia War of Independence. Welcome to ACN.
Now, you went to Manu, you commissioned the forces, you laid down a liberation vision, you laid down a code of conduct for these forces. You invoked the right of self-defense for the Ambazonian people. Is this what you envisioned? Or did you factor this as part of your calculus?
Yes, I did. Manu is the only state in my entire existence as a human being that has received me like I am some demigod. When I stepped into Daddy, I was not even sure. The first thing I did, I went on the ground on my knees and I kissed the soil. When I walked about 400 meters, I was surprised to find a military checkpoint manned by forces of the ADF. What happened at that checkpoint was life-changing. They opened the checkpoint, they gave me military salute. They had walkie-talkies and they were communicating. That is when the seriousness of what I had been preaching came into clear view to me. The reception by the population, the dance groups, most of all the blessing by the chief, who gave me a booklet, and I'll never forget what he told me. I should remember Daddy when this is all over. And I told him I would, and I will never forget. As to whether I envision what is going on, yes, I did. That is the reason we designed the code of conduct. The code of conduct was not simply only to inform our forces of the don'ts and the do's in times of war, was to begin to condition their mind on the limit of their actions, even when the enemy goes brutal. I know sometimes Amazonians have asked me, why don't you take revenge? It is very difficult when you define the limits of your actions to go beyond those limits, especially when your actions are forced by the actions of the enemy. Respecting international humanitarian law is very critical, not only during the period of liberation, but during the period of post-liberation. All what we are facing today will pale in comparison to what we will face if post-independence Amazonia is destabilized, because the way we conducted ourselves today carried into the period of governance. In wars, leaders must be rational. Leaders must have a long-term view, especially in liberation wars, because the essence of liberation struggles is to prepare your state for integration into a rule-based international order. And if the foundation of your existence is based on reckless violence and lack of a constitutional order that shapes the actions of individuals, actors, and the state, the spillover effect it will have on the period of governance will be immeasurable. And I still grapple with what La République is doing to our people, even though I know La République, even though we have studied their actions on their own people when they treated them like maquisards, the genocide they've committed on their own people, the senseless brutality they've meted on women, the rape of women, torture of civilians, execution of students. The foundation of Cameroon is based on violence. And we are blessed somehow by the presence of the social media that instantly exposes these actions and draws the eye of the world. That is what has regulated the actions of Cameroon in Ambazonia. Otherwise, the amount of villages that have been burnt would have been trebled. Civilians that have disappeared would have been trebled. The amount of brutality which they would have meted us would have been trebled. So, in a nutshell, yes, we factored these happenings into the design, into the strategy, and into the dynamic nature of that strategy to meet up with certain requirements that will keep our people focused, not to lose track, not to fall into intertribal incitations, not to fall into despondency, and not to become victims of their own struggle for freedom. My fellow Ambazonians, good morning. This is Dr. Ayaba. This is my daily briefing on the 11th of July 2024. First, I'll begin with greetings to each and every one of you, and God bless each and every one of you. And thank you for your continuous sacrifices towards the attainment of our goal of full independence and freedom for our country. I begin today with reacting to a circulation. There was an audio message circulated yesterday declaring that Wednesdays will be days of lockdown in solidarity with Ambazonian prisoners of war. This is a fake information. This has been circulated by agents of Yaoundé. They are trying to use this propaganda to undermine our different resistance actions and calls. Recall that when we instituted the no yellow color taxi, the first they attacked it, they held demonstrations, and then when they lost the battle, they declared that they are the ones who instituted it. So constantly they make a mockery of themselves. They are confused, they are desperate, and a drowning person would hang on to anything they see, even on a snake, in order to stay afloat. So it's a regime that is gone down like the Titanic, and they are engaged in repeated desperate actions, thinking that they can make a mockery of our resistance. Unfortunately, they are making a mockery of themselves. We have mastered communication. We are in self-defense. We are dealing with several sovereignty projects like a state. And so they must understand that this is a new generation with a new agenda and a new destination. So the way we show solidarity with our prisoners is continuously fight to ensure that the reason for which they went to jail is attained.
Historically, days of solidarity have been called with detained compatriots. Sometimes, if there is something that happens in jail, a prisoner dies, or some other actions, and then we could think of a particular day of solidarity. Every day in Ambazonia is a day of solidarity. Mondays are days of solidarity, not only with our prisoners, but also with our IDPs, our refugees, and the families of those who've lost loved ones. Anytime there is authentic communication, whether I agree with it or not, you will hear from me. And that's how you can get authenticity. But any audio message that is sent out there by desperate individuals, you drop them where they belong, the dustbin of history. The other day, I also signed an executive order banning land sales to citizens of Cameroon. This is a very serious issue, my people. I have said this in several outings. In every society, there are three factors of production. You have the land, you have the capital, or you have the labor. The most important factor of production for Amazonians is the land and the labor. And I know that our labor is cheap. Sometimes it's not even desired because the public sector, the private sector, they've all been dismantled. And so we use the labor we have to plow the fields, the land that we have. It has also become an asset for many Ambazonians. They can use the land to get immediate capital for investment. And we have also realized that the enemy has made it difficult for transactions between individuals. And so they've intruded into it to certify, to legalize all of these land sales. And we have seen situations where La Republique, colonial DOs and SDOs, the impostor mayors and others have become part and parcel of a cartel that is transferring Ambazonian land to Cameroon citizens. They have higher buying power. Even our Biafran compatriots who are in also have higher buying power than us. And I encourage Ambazonians to preserve their land. It doesn't mean you cannot sell a piece of land, but you should think seriously, very seriously, because that is the only asset you have that is non-perishable. It increases in value with time. I know there are families that are struggling, and sometimes you really need to sell that piece of land to even have an operation. And so you need to do it. But don't sell your piece of land to a Cameroon citizen. They are deliberately acquiring Ambazonian land to alter the demographic dynamics and to be able to use it in the future against us. That's how Zimbabwe almost collapsed. That's what South Africa is going through now. So we must learn from history. Secondly, we have also noticed that there are family fights and quarrels because of land. Powerful individuals, they use colonial elements to acquire family lands and sell them to whosoever. We have introduced ourselves in some. But going forward, all land disputes should be reported to quarterheads. And when they cannot be resolved, they will be reported to our forces or the ADLA, the Liberation Transitional Authorities within your area, and we will deal with it. Any land sale that we see announced, we will investigate it. And if we find that they're violating liberation laws by selling to La Republique, or powerful individuals within those families are using their power in association with collaborating with the enemy, we will put an injunction on the sale of those lands. Anybody who sells the land to citizen of La Republique will acquire that land after we gain our total freedom. And there will be consequences on every individual. The other issue I'd like to talk about, I think you people must have read some fake newspapers and lawsuits against Norway. I'll focus on Norway because against myself is not something I talk about. education is critical. And so when you see these things, I know people were worried when they read that, I have been taken to court in the US with the Norwegian Prime Minister. It's a joke, my people. It's a joke. It's almost like the joke I told you about the desperate attempts to institute days of actions to undermine, our critical activities. There are US laws. There are US laws that permit civil lawsuits against individuals who have engaged in sponsoring or what they call abetting acts of international terrorism that occurs on US soil. And I want you to know this. So Section 3 of that law authorizes the federal court jurisdiction, over a civil claim, against any foreign state or for physical injury to a person or property or death that occurs inside the US as a result of international terrorism. And this law is very specific. It only works and functions on the premise that the act of that international terrorism occurs within the United States of America. That's number one. Number two, it does not occur during war. So, and number three, it is perpetrated by a designated organization that has been designated as an international terrorist organization. So these are three conditions you must understand. There is an existing law for civil law claims against individuals or institutions that are perceived to conspire to commit, aid, or abet, acts of international terrorism that causes death, injury to humans or property. It must occur in the United States. That's number one. Number two, the law is also very clear about the fact that the act must have been committed by a designated international terrorist organization. The US usually designates groups as terrorist organization. No Ambazonian group has been designated as a terrorist organization. And it must occur not in times of war. So when you read these lawsuits, there are a couple of things that you must understand. And I don't want to get into. I think our spokespersons and individuals have dealt with the different actors and their underlying claim. But as a leader, what I want to talk to you about is for you to see the acts of desperation. First, we didn't exist. First, Ayaba did not exist. Then they gave him a name. He's a terrorist, and then they tried to negotiate with him. You can't be confused. You have to be clear. If you're fighting a war, you want to occupy my land, you have to be clear. When you start showing these things, I see you being desperate. You're looking for help. You put pressure on different countries to transfer me down. Yeah, I don't know if they can keep me in Yaoundé. Maybe if Norway says tomorrow that they are going to hand me over to them, they'll surely drop me from the sea. They can't lock me in a jail. They can't, except, I don't know. I'm not God, but I hate these people to the point where I don't think they can keep me in a jail. So they will drop me from the sky down into the Atlantic Ocean for me to die immediately. That one they should know. And so when I look at these things, I am not worried. I speak about these things because I know they use misinformation, they use intoxication and propaganda. Their aim is to weaken your resolve. Don't be afraid. If I drop today, you will continue. Kuva dropped. Asonganye dropped. Abombi dropped. Ivo dropped. Efang dropped. Piti dropped. The war is on. This is not a war by Ayaba. It's a war by the Ambazonian people who have become conscious of what is happening to them and have taken a firm stance. So I want you to not to be afraid. This is a season of resistance against a known enemy. Secondly, there is an analysis about Ambazonians having been detained. There is no Ambazonian who has been detained, who has gone to jail out here because they are involved in the struggle. Ambazonians, there are Ambazonians in the United States, including known persons like Mamangang, who are in jail because they violated United States law. They violated US laws. No matter how just your cause is. And I had cited the shipment of weapons into Iran, I think under President Reagan. It was illegal. And the president himself was, I think, investigated for violating US law. Once you are in the United States, you are not allowed without permission to ship any kind of weapons anywhere. Whether for good causes, bad causes, whether you are the president, whether you are the foreign minister, you are not allowed. You do that illegally, you'll be held accountable. That is what has happened to Ambazonians. Everywhere there are laws against money laundering. So if you are in the US or wherever in Europe and you are moving large amount of money that are not declared, that doesn't go through systems that are seen as monitored, then you can be charged for money laundering. It has nothing to do with the war. It has nothing to do with the purpose for which the money was being transferred. So if you are sending funds or money into designated organizations that have been designated as terrorist organizations, you will be violating, the Anti-Terrorism Act. So these are things that, these buffoons, this what I call church and bail lawyers have been going around and propagating, trying to frighten you people. We are not frightened by war tanks. The 12 of them entered Momo last night. And thousands of forces. We are not frightened by them. I will be frightened by lawsuit. These guys have lost every suit they have filed. Every suit, except the one they filed at the ICJ on their claim to owning Bakassi, because Bakassi is ours. If you review the case laws of the Human Rights Committee and other jurisprudences, you would find that Ambazonians have defeated them. Gorgie versus Cameroon, Albert versus Cameroon, Akwanga versus Cameroon, Titia Honjo versus Cameroon. All of these things, they defeated these enemies. They don't even know how to argue submissions. In one of their submissions at the Human Rights Committee, and that was very laughable. They don't understand law. The premise of individuals jumping jurisdiction, for example, if your rights are violated, then you can decide to move the case to, let's say, the Human Rights Committee under the ICCRP. You can only do that if you've exhausted domestic remedy. And it is very clear that the presence of domestic remedy is not enough to prevent somebody jumping jurisdiction. It must show that it is effective, and that it doesn't last forever. And in most of their submissions, their argument is like being made by people from the street. That's why they don't win any case. So we should not be afraid, my people. If there is anybody to be charged in any court of law, and we've captured these in a manifesto, and I'll read the section to you, which is important. If there is any person in this conflict to be charged, it is not Ambazonia, it is not Dr. Choi Ayaba, it's not any Ambazonian. It's La Republique and the Atangangis and all those who have worked to murder thousands of Ambazonians. And we captured this in the matters of law and justice. La République du Cameroon, having invaded and occupied the Ambazonian territory in September 1961, and after dissolving all executive and legislative institutions of Ambazonia in the manner of tyrants, has violated the territorial integrity of Ambazonia, has scorned and violated the laws of all people of the world, including, but not limited to, the right to self-determination enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 1514, paragraph 15 of 14 December 1960, that affirms the right of all peoples to their sovereignty. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, which stipulates the Ambazonians' rights to found a nation and name a nation and UN General Assembly Resolution 26, paragraph 25, subsection 25 of 24th October 1970 that further affirms the right of the Ambazonian people to establish their sovereign and independent state as a mode of expression of their right of self-determination. By its illegal occupation of Ambazonia in 1961, despite democratic protests and legal actions, and declaration of war on the people of Ambazonia on November 30, 2017, against the aspirations of the Ambazonian people to their sovereignty, Cameroon has proven itself as an aggressor and has, by this forceful occupation, enforced her presence by ruthless continuous massacres of thousands of the Ambazonian people and razings of tens of thousands of their homes and hundreds of thousands of towns and villages, thus displacing millions of our people who are currently scattered all over the world and depriving thousands of children of the right to education. So if there is anyone to be brought before a court of law for acts of terrorism, aggression in violation of UN Charter, and acts of deprivation of liberty in illegal incarceration, acts of rendition in kidnapping Ambazonians from foreign countries and illegally transferring them, and acts of trying Ambazonians under military courts as civilians, and crimes against humanity, which includes systematic torture, rape as a weapon of war crimes, which include burning of villages, burning of places, and all what you have, and genocide, the intent to eliminate physically part or whole of our people, has been demonstrated in very clear cases. The intent has been proven in their systematic attack on young Ambazonian males, capturing of commanders, burning of their remains, killing in Gabo, and burning of the remains of young girls who are the future of Ambazonia. So if there is anybody to be arraigned in front of a court of law, it will be Cameroon. But because of the international conspiracy against our people, the court of law is the battlefields across the 13 states of Ambazonia. And prevail we have, and we must have hope, and we must be resilient, we must not be afraid. We own that land. They don't. We are more powerful. They aren't.
One of my sister, they kill her for night, they rape you, then kill her for night. The Santa towards Presbyterian Church, opposite Presbyterian Church. I recover this way, one will carry him now, who live on mortuary, where they rape him. They rape you for night. Yes. Yes. Go rape him. Yes. I recover this. Michael! Yes. I recover this. Now in this way they take and go to mortuary. I recover this. Now girl where they rape him for night. When I'm a family sister, where they rape you for night and still kill you.
Alongside other Ambazonians in the diaspora?
One of the things we need to ask, and I'm one of those people that was completely not even in line with the propaganda that went through Eric status being arrested or being questioned. And if you have watched online with what I have done, I will not be sounding so political. You know, people like Kedia, they support a particular platform and a particular ideology. I've been asking several times if Eric Tato was arrested linked to offenses committed or related to the Cameroonian crisis. And many knew very well that it was a vehemently zero, a no. And that those who picked up as an opportunity took it to gain some cheap political points at the level of their paymaster. And that others who have files and envelopes waited or are waiting them in a 2D, some even wrote happily that if the envelope can still come, they are very happy. That's what somebody who works and said they are doing their activism with an Salai law firm said they were happy. If the envelope can come, they will take it honestly and then feel it themselves. But one of the things I have tried to ask is, are Cameroonians really serious about building a judicial system? Why should you be thinking that somebody arrested for offenses committed in the United States should be extradited to Cameroon? Eric Tato was one of those who equally benefited from the COVID incident. If we learn very well that the United States government came out bailing companies that has faced an economic situation during the COVID pandemic. And so Eric Tato is not only alone. I want to tell you that even close relatives of the Nsalai law firms were equally affected. The wife of Nsalai equally benefited from that fund. And sometime last year, he was equally questioned on performing a fake payroll. And performing a fake payroll means violate the US laws and not Cameroonian laws. But since then, we know that Nsalai is one of the group that is based in the US trying to them counter or pro state politics in Cameroon. He is always trying to prove to his paymaster that he's doing an extremely good work. But should we gain political points when we don't offer anything? That is the reason. Eric Tato was not released because bail, or it is the provision of the law. And you know the law on extradition. Even when you are the worst criminal on earth, they only extradite you. I mean, if Eric was arrested on a Cameroonian case, like Madame Ngam and the rest, they can never be extradited to Cameroon if the judicial system in the United States proves a better system. It's not the kidnapping system that happened with the Naira 9 or those whom we have that were arrested in Lagos. And one of the things we need to know, that the judicial system in Africa is a respecter of the king, the respecter of the crown, and nothing about the rules of institutions. And so we cannot extradite somebody from the United States to Cameroon, where we know that there's a lot of political intimidation, a lot of political gain points, a lot of corruption and embezzlement, where people might even just be condemned for the fact that they don't support a particular political ideology, where people can even be condemned just for the fact that they were hated because they come from a hated tribe, or maybe what we call the Anglophone syndrome in Cameroon. Those are some of the issues when you look at it. We have a lot of people who reside in France, or we have others within the European Union. When the EU law system does not permit you to be extradited to your country, I'm talking of what maybe you might have heard within recent times, that somebody like Francois Compaoré was refused to be extradited to Burkina Faso because the EU law looks at it that his case might be more political than judicial. And so if the EU law system in that standard could say this person should not be extradited to Burkina Faso, why should Cameroonians be thinking that every time a Cameroonian that is hated by the political regime that has taken Cameroon hostage for the past 60 years should instead be clamored and even sent to prison. Please, you have your mind.
He cut the hands of people, and those people are suffering.
Please, Mr. Kedia, if you have a political I said, and hope honestly your own hand was naked. And so one of the things we are saying here is that when you support a particular political milieu, there is at times you lack the sense of honesty. And everybody that was claimed until it came out of the national media, it is a disgrace to some of us, which means that a media which every Cameroonian is paying becomes more impartial or becomes more partial. Then we should be capable of reporting facts as they are. Okay. Let me not make it clear that the Cameroonian press and even social media should stop propagating false news. Eric Tato was not taken to court because of the Anglophone separatist movement. He was taken to court because of a crime, loan fraud. And that is a United States crime.
Let me come in here, Dr. Ako John Ako, in the affidavit which was submitted.
Hi, greetings my fellow Ambazonians. I salute everybody. My name is Tapang Ivo. Tanku, I come again for can broke this particular breaking news. Great news, sweet news, pepper news is sweet past Alagata Pepe. Now, Salah Emmanuel, there's quack on the same phone screen, and his sister, this woman, Salah also, you direct one mommy, one papa, sister. That means they born them as they born you, so the next year they born Salah Emmanuel. This woman for on a screen, and this brother, now all in Salah family. Their papa been a thief man for Cameroon, state thief, a very ugly fellow, Salah Christopher. May he rest in pieces. Their papa been a thief man for Cameroon. He ruined people their futures. People they like he ruined their futures. Now they are picking where they sponsor them. They come United States of America. They still continue the thief for this United States. Now, if you see at the right hand for my screen, there is a story. And this particular story, they show you, say, Ashburn woman convicted of 2.5 million pandemic fraud. Pandemic fraud, Ashburn woman convicted of 2.5 million pandemic fraud. I go read this particular story, one of the same on the side of my screen, for expose the gangster regime and his cohorts. They are picking them. They always favor their papa them. No, they favor their papa. No, me, they favor their papa. For thief, yes, they favor papa. For face, yes. For everything, they favor papa. Make a break down this story so that make una for Ambazonia una get revolutionary orgasm. Why? Because this idiot wait there for screen. He don't report some of we for all kind bureaus of investigation. Lie about we for court. So that I win them. I don't win them tire so that they pay me $12,000. Say make I take and compensate myself with them. From this Salah Emmanuel one at the same phone on screen, I be winning for court for America. And as God go do a thing, God don't expose the hunter. That means the hunter becomes the haunted. Now, make I maximize my screen and read on this particular story where it be very good news. But before then, make I take out this idiots, their picture them for my corner screen and maximize and show on the story. Now, when I see this thing come up from the United States Attorney's Office, that means a big lawyer for United States, the major, the like Attorney General for Cameroon of Ambazonia. Read the story. Ashburn woman convicted of 2.5 million fraud pandemic. And this is the real story. As we read, we go down. A federal jury convicted an Ashburn woman today on charges of conspiracy, bank fraud, and money laundering. According to the court records and evidence presented at trial, Rose Marie Nsalai, 47, and her husband fraudulently obtained 2 Paycheck Protection Program PPP loans. The PPP was a program instituted by the United States Congress to help businesses affected by the coronavirus pandemic continue to pay salaries or wages to their employees. Salai carried out the scheme in connection with two of her husband's businesses by creating fraudulent payroll documentation for each business and then submitting that documentation in support of the PPP loan applications. The fraudulent documentation presented at that her husband's businesses had dozens of employees with over 17 million US dollars of annual payroll in 2019, when in fact they had few, if any, employees. In total, Salai and her husband fraudulently obtained approximately $2.5 million in loan proceeds, and they then spent those funds on items unrelated to any legitimate PPP related expense. Those items included the down payment on a 7,000 square foot home in Leesburg, Virginia. Salai's husband pleaded guilty to the scheme in 2021. I want to see him, they don't hyperlink him, and I go open now when I go see him. Salai faces a maximum of about 30 years in prison. Ambazonians, this is real news. Now, this is this woman called Salai Rosemary, and yeah, your husband. Last year, the husband, when I see him, 2021, that was about 2 years ago. Thursday, January 28, 2021, the husband 2 years ago was also on the trial, the docket. He pled guilty to the $2.5 million coronavirus fraud. Now, when I see the husband in name, Didier Kindambo, where the show say na surely La Republique. That means say La Republique, they married La Republique, and La Republique, they like have a thief. I never see me family with a thief, so no me yo. I never see him before. Thief family, when I see exactly the fraud, and these are the people who claim to have a reputation or even some credibility to report Ambazonians in courts in the United States. Now, I hope the FBI and all those departments. Yeah, greetings, my fellow Ambazonians. My name is Tapangai Votanku. I am here with the breaking news. The family of Nsala Emmanuel will be languishing for 30 good years in the federal prison in the United States of America. Let me give you the breaking news and the good news. This woman called Rosemary Nsala, the blood sister, one mommy, one papa of Nsala Emmanuel, the quack of Nsala Emmanuel, whom I won in federal court, of Nsala Emmanuel, whom the federal judges ordered to pay me $12,000 for leveling frivolous charges against my personality. Nsala Emmanuel, who is the son of a state thief, whose father was a thief, an ugly thief, running the Cameroon government. Nsala's family in the United States will be languishing for the next 30 years because the sister and her husband have been sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for conducting fraud under the watchful eyes of Joe Biden, under the watchful eyes of the entire Americans, under the watchful eyes of Donald Trump. Let me read the story from the Attorney General's office, United States Attorney's Office, Eastern District of Virginia. This is publicly accessible information. A federal jury convicted an Ashburn woman today on charges of conspiracy, bank fraud, and money laundering. According to court records and evidence presented at trial, Rosemary Nsala, 47, and her husband fraudulently obtained 2 Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) loans. The PPP was a program instituted by the United States Congress to help businesses affected by the coronavirus pandemic continue to pay salaries or wages to their employees. Salai carried out the scheme in connection with two of her husband's businesses by creating fraudulent payroll documentation for each business and then submitting the documentation in support of the PPP loan applications. The fraudulent documentation represented that her husband's businesses had dozens of employees with over 17 million of annual payroll in 2019, when in fact they had few, if any, employees. In total, Salai and her husband fraudulently obtained approximately $2.5 million in loan proceeds and then spent those funds on items unrelated to any legitimate PPP-related expenses. Those items included the down payment on a 7,000 square foot home in Leesburg, Virginia. Salai's husband pleaded guilty to the scheme in 2021. Salai faces a maximum penalty of up to 30 years in prison when sentenced on July 19 this year. Actual sentences for federal crimes are typically less than the maximum penalties. The federal district court judge will determine any sentence after taking into account the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. My name is Tapang Aivotanku, and do have a pleasant day as we've exposed these state thieves from Cameroon, hiding and residing in the United States of America.
But one for assure Ambazonians them say this case no be an indictment